Simon, I appreciate your time. What can you tell us about the news today that lamb exports are also being impacted? Do we know what the companies involved are being told about their future prospects in China?
That's really, this is old news in a way. These plants have been delisted now for 6 months, and they join a long list of other plants globally that have been delisted due to COVID-19. So since June this year, 66 plants around the world have been delisted because of COVID-19. I think what's unfortunate here, though, is that these 2 plants voluntarily delisted themselves in the belief that that would then later be advantageous for being relisted by China. And in actual fact, that hasn't occurred, and that they, along with
now approximately 34 plants, still remain unable to ship to China today, even though they voluntarily gave up their licence to do so.
I understand that we're now up to 6 beef exporters being on that banned list. Correct me if I'm wrong. What proportion of the export market do they represent? Other beef exporters are no doubt on high alert.
I think everyone is. Unfortunately, this is the nature of the current trade relations with China. We've actually got, in total, 8 meat plants, beef, that have been delisted. Those 4 were due to now 4, but as of yesterday, now 5 due to labelling issues, 1 due to a chemical residue issue, and 2, as I said, due to COVID-19. So the market, China, is very important to us. Last year, it was our number 1 market. 300,000 metric tonnes were shipped there. This year, due to the rebuild going on in Australia, it slipped to number 3, and we're only going to ship about 33% less there this year, so around about 200,000 tonnes. But nonetheless, it's a critical market for Australia, and in particular for high-end beef, which is one of our, I guess, very, very important markets.
Okay, so from what you said there, it's clear that it's not just one blanket problem that China's using as a reason to refuse these products. There are varied explanations depending on the company involved, it seems. Are those grievances justified in some cases? Is it a case that the rules have essentially changed without the companies being updated? What's going on in terms of some of those problems that China is citing?
Yes, they're really good questions. And I think the only answer I have is that once upon a time, the tolerance of the Chinese government and the officials was far greater than what it is today. So would these same grievances have occurred or resulted in some of the closures or the preventions of shipping there that we've seen today? Probably not. So the best way to answer that is simply to say that unfortunately China's tolerance of any mislabelling or problems that occur, unfortunately, are met with pretty short understandings of what's going on. But let's keep it in mind that these 2 plants, these lamb plants, are one of 66 that have been banned globally in 6 months. And right now, Canada, for example, has 8 plants also banned from shipping to China because of COVID-19. And that is a huge impact on their beef industry. So, their pork industry, I should say. So we're not alone, is the point I'm making, in some of the problems we're facing here.
Which means that the Trade Minister, Simon Birmingham, is in something between a rock and a hard place. The government is, though, copying a lot of criticism from Labor for its handling of China relations more broadly. How do you rate the government's handling of these issues?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think that the art of politics, or should I say diplomacy, is really what we're talking about here. And there's no doubt that there's been fault probably on both sides, and the challenge is trying to find, I guess, common ground in which we can work together to resolve our differences. So, we've had number of situations, whether it's barley, wine, or the beef industry, in which there's been problems occurring. I recently conducted a webinar between the former Trade Minister, Andrew Robb, and Dr. Lawrenson, and a Chinese journalist. And Professor Lawrenson actually comes from the Australian-China Institute, Trade Institute. And in that interview that we did with them, we sought, how do we find the circuit breaker, was the question that I asked our three panellists. And some really interesting suggestions from our former Trade Minister, along with Professor James Lawrenson, as I said, from the Australia-China Relations Institute. And that was RCEP, the new trade agreement, a form of doing, trying to find some common ground, some good. Another suggestion was, should we adopt a Japan-style diplomacy? So what's interesting with Japan is that when COVID broke out in China, the Japanese government, ministers and members of their parliament all gave up part of their income and donated it to the Chinese to help them manage COVID-19. Could you imagine the same thing happening in Australia? But that was just one of many examples where other countries have really gone out of their way to help restore or hold that relationship with China. So my point being is that there are many, many suggestions coming forward on how to rectify and, you might say, find the circuit breaker in terms of our relationship here.
We all hope it's resolved ASAP. Tough times for our exporters at the moment. Simon Quilty, appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Thank you.